I went to Machu Picchu when I was 20. Me and my friends, we climbed Huayna Picchu, which is the mountain overlooking Machu Picchu. It was sunrise time, but it was so cloudy that you couldn't see anything. So we just sat on this hill looking at clouds. Like you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was that covered. And in the split second, the sky just opened up and you saw Machu Picchu appearing below you. I was so grateful. I literally started to cry. Every time now I need to get into that space where I'm feeling a little like stagnant, I'll take myself into a place where I'm so grateful for something that it makes me cry. And it just, the next best thing just happens.
That's amazing. Amazing. And when you put yourself in those experiences, then you have that physical feeling. Like that is a muscle memory that gets implanted into your body.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
We are here to learn in the spirit of life.
I'm all about believe. You're about spreading blessings. It's great.
What about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of life?
What a great question.
Because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life.
A whole lot of conversations with people about life and how those things manifest as blessings and lessons, and sometimes both.
It's my connection.
You're going to get schooled.
The journey is the journey.
What you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life.
Remember the reality of how sweet people are.
Spread blessings around the world.
You are the most remarkable energy. You make me pause, make me excited, make me think, and make me spontaneously come up with an answer. This is another one of those great moments in time in my life. Thank you for reaching out to ask if I would do the show.
Welcome back to Blessings, friends. Today, I am speaking to a beautiful soul with a passion for bucket lists and helping others to age backwards, which is why I love her. She's traveled and lived all over the world. Born in Ukraine, she now resides in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, my neck of the woods, where she has built a business and a community, following her passion for wellness, longevity, curiosity, and being a good human. She's absolutely on fire in the wellness world as the owner of Elixir Health and Wellness. She's an inspiring example of what life looks like when you go after your dreams and make the world a better place in the process. Welcome, Yuliya Semenovych, to the show.
Hi, Mitzi.
So when did you start this famous bucket list?
I was about 19, I think, 19, 20.
Do you mind saying how old you are now?
I'm 34.
So did you actually start pursuing the things on your list at 19?
Yeah, that was the whole point of making it. I made it at 19 and then I started checking boxes off almost immediately.
What was the first thing you put on it?
I have it right here, actually.
You keep it with you?
I do.
I love that.
Yeah, it goes everywhere I go. The first actual item on here is write a gondola in Venice, but the first thing I checked off was going to Machu Picchu.
Okay. We have to talk about this as a strategy. This is like a life hack strategy. We have to get into this.
Yeah.
Because people make bucket lists. We have bucket lists. Mine is mostly in my head, to tell you the truth. I don't have it written down. But the idea of writing a physical bucket list and taking it with you wherever you go.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Yeah. And I laminated it.
Look at that.
And it's all the things I've handwritten to add to it, the years I've checked things off, written next to those items. The saying out of sight, out of mind applies to everything, including the things that you keep saying you'll do eventually.
How many special criteria for the things that are on your bucket list? Are they all like really special things, or are there any of like normal kind of things on there?
No, they're all over the map. I have everything from meeting the Dalai Lama to marrying the love of my life to starting a business to learning how to do a Rubik's Cube. Like it goes all over the map. And that's one of the reasons why I did it the way I did it, is because if you have things that are only really big things on it, your life is made up 99% of normal basic stuff. And people miss out on all of that curiosity and learning because they don't have time for it. But if you have 2 hours free this weekend, you just look at this thing and you're like, oh, what can I do today? Run a 5K. Okay, let's see what's going on in my area. Let me just do that real quick. And now you have one more thing that you've done in your life.
This is I feel like this is a book, Yuliya. The bucket list strategy.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful thing. I can imagine if I did this, I would probably be constantly coming up with ideas. Mine would be probably 1,000,000 pages long by now. Is that what happens to you?
Oh yeah. That's why I have things like handwritten in here. And then after a while, I've gotten so used to being uncomfortable and saying yes to things. I don't even have to write it down. If someone just says, hey, like this past weekend, I went to pick up a friend from the airport. I haven't seen him since college, so we have not talked in 12 years. And he's like, do you want to go ride motorcycles through Times Square? And I'm like, never done that before. So we did a midnight ride through Times Square on a motorcycle, and I have not seen this person in 12 years. I mean, your life just becomes such an adventure if you get into the habit of saying yes to things that are different or uncomfortable or out of your general strategy of how you operate day to day.
Exactly. I just wrote that down actually on my list of ideas for things to talk about. And it was do something that is outside of what you would normally do. You're so fun. And they talk about fun and the experience of enjoyment as being the kind of mind state that you need to be in order to manifest your dreams, basically.
Yeah.
Is that intentional on your part, keeping yourself in that kind of high vibe?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely was a learning curve. The older I get, the more I realize people don't ever get to that point. But even when I was younger, I went to Machu Picchu when I was 20. And me and my friends, we climbed Huayna Picchu, which is the mountain overlooking Machu Picchu. It was sunrise time, but it was so cloudy that you couldn't see anything. So we just sat on this hill looking at clouds. Like you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was that covered. And in the split second, the sky just opened up and you saw Machu Picchu appearing below you. And I was so grateful. I literally started to cry. And that's every time now I need to get into that space where I'm feeling a little like stagnant. I'll take myself into a place where I'm so grateful for something that it makes me cry. And the next best thing just happens.
That's amazing. Amazing. And when you put yourself in those experiences, then you have that physical feeling. Like that is a muscle memory that gets implanted into your body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have this little strategy where if I really want to remember something, I'll just tell my brain to take a picture of it with the feelings. And like, I will take an extra few seconds to actually look around and put a little pin into that feeling and into that place. And then anytime I need it, I'll just go through this little Rolodex because it's only a couple of times where I tell my brain to specifically remember this thing. It's just immediately that super high charged, happy, grateful place you could physically go into in your brain.
Did you always do this even before you were 19 and you started that list?
Probably. I probably did. I was born in Ukraine. And then when we moved here, when I was like 7, 8, my parents had nothing. Like they had 2 kids and $1,000. And we lived in this really hood of a neighborhood in New Jersey. Like my parents couldn't even afford to buy me a 25-cent book from the thrift store. Like that's how little we had. So from that time, they've taken great care of us. Like they've always had jobs to provide for us. But on top, anything extra was, you got it, you'll figure it out. So I had to figure out how to navigate life really young, like from the time I was 7 years old. So I must have somehow subconsciously developed that strategy for coping because we didn't know English. We were poor. Like I was bullied all the time. And it must have been some kind of coping mechanism that just developed within me to put myself into that next, I don't think this is how life really is. I think it's actually like this, to take me out of that negative place and bring me into the, let's see what I could do, not what other people are all telling me.
Wow. All right. Let's dig into that a little bit. So you lived in Ukraine from the time you were born until you were 7.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of that life?
I do. So my grandpa actually built the house we lived in. And in Ukraine, it's a lot more. So in the villages, especially, it's a lot more likely that you would live with 2, 3, 4 generations in the same house or in the same property. So it was me, my parents, and my mom's parents. And I remember all the time of like all the old ladies would take turns taking cows out to pasture. So I would go when it was my grandma's turn and I would help her take the cows out to pasture, and she would point to different herbs and say, this one, if you make tea out of these flowers, it's good for high blood pressure. And the root out of these herbs are good for whatever else. I remember being in daycare, and I was like that, the little feisty ringleader. I always hated bullies. And my mom told me this one time in school, she came in to pick me up, and the teachers called her into the back room, and she said, oh my God, what did Yuliya do now? Apparently this little boy was bullying my best friend, and I took a sword out of our toy chest and pushed him into a cubby. And I said, you talk to her like that one more time, I'll kill you.
Oh, no.
I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. So I was always an advocate for the little guy. That's
Yeah.
probably why when we moved to the US, my mentality was already like, I'm not the little guy, I'm the protector. So let me figure out how to, with what I have, be resourceful and do things different.
I feel like that is a difference between someone, if you were raised from birth to 7 with a certain mindset and a certain environment that allowed you to develop resilience, then when you moved here and experienced bullying, you were able to cope with it better, as opposed to somebody who may not have had that type of foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great family system. We had so many friends and family lived in our village, and it was always a very loving home. And I think I could recite poetry by the time I was like 1. So my family was always really encouraging of learning and growth and doing things that might challenge you a little. My dad kayaked for Ukraine. It's like the country. And my grandpa would tell me, I didn't know this until later, but my grandpa apparently would, back in the USSR, when he was like 20, he built a trunk that was the size of a refrigerator. And he would pack it up with eggs and take a train into Siberia to sell our eggs and pick up fur and slippers and bring it back to our village. And this was, he would have been 90 now. So this was 60 years ago, 70 years ago. He just did this. So like my whole family has this entrepreneurial spirit that obviously I wouldn't have known when I was 5, but it was always like that type of encouraging. Yeah, sure. You've got it. You'll figure it out. Just go do it.
Yeah, there's always a way. And it's the opposite of having a victim mentality. You have to make it work.
Yeah.
Do you think that your grandmother's influence with the herbs has something to do with your passion for wellness?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to go to the hospital in Ukraine. So that's the first thing. They're only places you go to when you're sick or you need surgery. They're not places you go to get better. They're places you go when you're like, they're not preventative. There's the preventative stuff happens at home. It's the home cooking. It's growing up with livestock. It's everyone having an orchard, and we don't have front yards of grass. Our front yards are flowers and vegetables and fruit and trees. And it just, all of that has been the foundation of what health is. You walk places, you have community, people come over and you take care of each other's kids, you take turns sharing resources. Like all of that was what I did until I was 7.
So it must have been pretty striking to your parents and to you when you came here to the United States.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
What
imagine having.
Yeah. Tell me your first impressions.
So the first place we were taken to was McDonald's. I think we arrived in 97 or 98. And it was my first time seeing an escalator. Like those are the 2 things I remember of my first day in America.
Wow. Yeah. All right. It's such an interesting thing to speak to a person who has that perspective that Americans mostly don't have unless they've come from somewhere else. So your parents, why did they leave?
They wanted a better education for me and my sister. Ukraine, although it's not considered like a third world country, a lot of people think of it that way. And they both have college degrees that don't count anywhere outside of Ukraine. So they wanted to give us that opportunity to get educated in a country where you actually have a chance of your degree being recognized.
Okay. So they came here with $1,000 and you and your sister. And you said that you moved to a place that was tough. Was it in a city?
It was in Passaic.
Passaic. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's tough. When you first came to the United States and went to school and got around other Americans, people who had lived here their whole lives, what kinds of strategies did you use to try to assimilate or fit in?
So that's really hard because I didn't even speak English.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember being bullied of not knowing the difference between the word president and principal. And the kids would always try to get you to say things because they think it's hysterical. You don't even know. And I think I retreated socially, but intellectually, there was a lot more growth. I would just actively listen to everything I could. It was just like me trying to learn as much as possible. It's a little hard to take myself back to being 7 because I feel like I've lived like 30 lifetimes in my 34 years of age. And then one thing that I actually didn't realize until a few years later is something my parents did really is they didn't ever make us feel like we were different from other kids. They never pointed out those differences. Maybe they felt it, but they never specifically said, oh, we have so little and they have so much, or, oh, you're white and they're black, whatever it is. And that's something that I find really interesting over the last few years. Me and my sister were like the only white kids in our school, and we had no idea. That's how much it wasn't presented to us. We moved to Ukraine was at that time anyways, even now, it's a primarily white country. You don't see people of different cultures and ethnicities. And America is so multicultural, especially in Passaic. And it wasn't until we moved to Pennsylvania when I was 12 or 13, and I'm looking at old pictures and I'm like, Mom, we were the only white kids in school. I was just like, yeah, didn't you know that? I said, no, I had no idea. I thought we were all the same.
That's
so it was just
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So a lot of the times now where people are making a big deal about we have to talk about all of this stuff, like you sometimes really don't. And it's not sweeping it under the rug. It's just my parents just did such a great job of making it feel like everyone's the same. Everyone has the same opportunities. Everyone has the same brain, the same eyes. It's what you do with it that really matters. It's nothing else.
That's really beautiful. It's interesting because we have that kind of parallel because my first job was in a inner city school and it was an all Black school. And I can actually remember, you're making me think about a time that a little girl came in and she was the only white kid in the whole school. And she was bullied very badly. And it's interesting because I got to watch that as a teacher. How did the teachers handle it?
It depended on the teacher. Like I had one teacher that just was so kind, and he's, oh my God, the boys are teasing you because they think you're cute. Don't cry, don't cry. Please just don't cry. Like some teachers actually bought me books because they knew our situation. So I had books to take home. There was one teacher that we went to a Ukrainian Catholic school for, it was a year or 2 years. And she was a nun, and she actually told my mom I was retarded. She just didn't like immigrants. Even though she was a teacher at a Ukrainian school, so she knew it was going to be some Ukrainian people there. I was like, there's no way. Like, there's no, I think it was third grade, I want to say that this was in. Because she's like, she's just so slow. I can't teach her. She's just so dumb. Like, she needs to go back a year. And the school said, okay, we'll test her. Like, if the teacher says she needs to be tested, then we have to test her. they tested me and I tested out of that grade. Like I wasn't stupid. I was just bored.
Yes.
So I ended up skipping her whole entire grade and I moved straight into fourth grade. But it just
That worked out to your advantage.
Yeah. It just so depended on the teacher and on the year and what school you're in. And in inner city schools, there's a lot bigger problems than bullying sometimes.
Oh,
so,
God, yes. Yeah. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to that little girl, that 7-year-old self, what would you say now?
Nothing. I would just stand back and be like, yeah, she'll be fine.
Be like, yeah, you got this.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
Oh my gosh.
Knowing what kind of personality I have as I've grown, I think that adversity is probably one of the biggest gratitude things that I have, because it forced me to figure it out at such a young age. And it's both nurture and nature, because my sister is only a year younger than me, but we are totally different. She went into the more of a victim. She needed more from our parents or from the teachers, from the community. She needed that support and she never got it. And I went into the, maybe I needed it, but I'll just figure out how to get it myself. If I was a different person, maybe I would say something to that little girl, but seeing me today, I'm like, this is good for you.
She doesn't need me.
She doesn't need me.
Okay, that's cool. It is interesting to think about the way that people raised in the same family have a different perception of things, and that they react differently and live their life differently. But you have always been someone who's really gotten after it. And I know that you have lived in various places around the world. So can you talk about what is one of the most interesting places you've ever lived, and maybe a little bit about why you went there?
They're so different, Mitzi. Like they're so different. I the first place I moved to was New Zealand. And that country is just so stunning. It's hard to put into words. People have AI to create nature, and nature there is just more beautiful than any AI could create it. And everyone's just so healthy. I lived for 2 months in Auckland, and then I moved down to the South Island to Queenstown. I spent about probably 10 months down in Queenstown, and I didn't see any sick people. I didn't see any frail old people. There were a ton of old people, but no one was unhealthy. Everyone did outdoor activities. Because the island was so isolated, you had to do a lot of farming, and you ate a lot of local food. So that was just interesting, because the landscape was absolutely stunning. And then a huge difference to that, the next country I moved to right out of New Zealand was Singapore. And then Singapore is like this gigantic cosmopolitan metropolis of all sorts of nationalities mixed together. And there's absolutely no farmland, and all of the forests have been paved over. It was just like, pick two completely different places, and those are the two.
Why'd you choose those two places?
New Zealand. So there's a work visa program. It's a reciprocity program the United States has with a couple of other countries. It used to be a lot more, but it's gotten reduced. New Zealand and Australia are still on those lists. So if you're under, let's say 30, and you have a college degree with a fairly good GPA, if you can pass a basic physical, you have guaranteed work rights in that country for a year. You just get a visa and you come in and you're treated like a citizen of that country. I had met somebody during my trip to Peru, Machu Picchu, that was moving to New Zealand. I went out and visited him, and I'm like, oh, I love this place. He's like, you could get a visa and just stay. So that's what I did. I went back home, I finished school, and within 2 weeks, I was in New Zealand. And then Singapore was, let's spin the globe and see where it lands. And they're also English speaking. So why not Singapore?
That's interesting. What did you do to keep yourself afloat when you were there, like for work?
I found jobs everywhere I went. It was convenient because me and the guy I was dating at the time moved to Singapore at the same time. So we both were pretty adventure minded. So it was nice having that support emotionally. In New Zealand, we landed in Queenstown and went to grab lunch at like a local restaurant. And I said, hey, are you guys hiring? And they're like, yeah, come back tomorrow. You can trial for a job. So I found a job the day I landed just by asking. Yeah, it was just that easy. And Singapore, I used to do a lot of couch surfing. It's transitioned a little bit, but back then the OG couch surfing was very community minded, and you could basically request to sleep on someone's couch and you had to trust strangers. That was the accommodation part at first. Just found Singapore doesn't have a work visa program, so I needed to get sponsored. And I ended up finding a job working for this guy who was a fantastic mentor. It was a virtual personal assistant company. I was a startup and I was their first hire to help build it out. And then he ended up sponsoring me. So I had a job there for probably 2 years. I lived in Australia for about a year. And then I got a job there again through asking. I just said, hey guys, I'm in Australia. Does anyone know anyone who's hiring? And I had a girl ping me back and said, I think actually this woman is looking for someone just like you. Why don't you just go and interview? So drove down to the Gold Coast and interviewed with her, and they're like, yeah, you're hired. What else? I spent time in Spain. I just worked remotely. I got my strength training certification. So I was training clients online and doing some work through Fiverr. Like I was doing copywriting for people. And where else have I lived? And then Thailand was when I was working in Philadelphia as a trainer at this gym. One of my clients would always go to Thailand for the winter. Like he hated the winters in Pennsylvania. And the one year he went over and he said, you know what? I'm done with my corporate life. I can't take this anymore. Do you guys want me to just come in? I'll take a reduced salary. Can I be the director of this fitness retreat? And they said, yeah, sure. You can be our director. That's fine. So he called me that same day. He said, hey, I just got the job as a director. If you can fly over here, I'll guarantee you a job. So a month later, I was in Thailand.
Wow.
Again, yeah, it's all just connections and saying yes.
My dad is 83 years young. Every morning, he sends my sister and I and all his grandchildren a good morning message. It's always something uplifting, positive, and encouraging. And it always says, I love you. We all look forward to this, and we know that Granddad won't be around forever. So we really cherish these messages of love and empowerment. My dad loves to say, every day is a new opportunity. And that is what he taught me. That, along with how to work smarter, hold family dear, and go after my dreams. I know there are people out there who go through the motions every day with no one saying good morning, no encouraging word, and to support a positive mindset. And there are others who are doing all the right things, but still need a little nudge to create and maintain positive habits throughout the day. So in my dad's honor, I've created Your Positive Moment. Research clearly shows the benefits of positivity and connection. A recent Gallup poll showed a significant percentage of the world is lonely. Your Positive Moment solves these problems. These are messages that come directly to your phone first thing in the morning, so you can begin every day on a high note. The message includes a loving greeting, an affirmation, a daily reflection, and an easy action step to get you going in the direction of growth and fulfillment and transformation, and to help you stack up good habits. A simple daily message has the power to change your life. Get started with your beneficial morning message habit for free. yourpositivemoment.com.
Saying yes. There's a book about that called The Surrender Experiment. Have you read that? Michael Singer.
I have not.
Yeah, it's a great book about that same concept of just saying yes to whatever comes into your life.
Yeah.
And it's similar, the idea of the adventures that it can take you on. It feels a little bit Forrest Gumpy to me. Things just come.
Yeah, they do. You string one thing in and then it's like a little crochet effect. It just keeps going.
Yeah, that's right. So when did you come back and settle in the Lehigh Valley?
It was about 6 years ago at this point. I came back
Um,
for my sister's wedding.
And you decided to stay. And
I didn't decide to stay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was forced upon me. So
Ah,
my sister's wedding came up, and then she got pregnant right away, and it was like the first baby to my only sister. So I wanted to be here for her. And then as soon as the baby was born, COVID shut the borders down. So I was already thinking, what's my next place to go? And I was looking at Portugal. And then
mm.
when COVID shut the borders down, I was like, oh, I guess I'm staying.
How did you get the idea to start the wellness facility?
I don't have the book with me, but I've had a journal for probably as long as I've had a bucket list of what I want, like my ideal perfect place to look like if I was to ever build something out.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking about it and exploring different therapies in every country I've been. It's just something that's been like ruminating in my mind.
Mm.
And I got an opportunity. I was here anyways, and I thought, it's COVID. What else could I do? Look at my bucket list, start a business. Okay, let's do that. I got connected with a doctor who specialized in hyperbaric therapy. So I got to learn a little about that through the course of working with him. And I thought this would just be such a good little fun intro experiment. If I wanted this huge, big notebook full of the perfect retreat, I had to start somewhere. And it came up as an opportunity to start. So I just cherry picked the pieces that I thought were going to be the biggest levers and just did it.
Yeah. And you just opened it up. You took the leap. That's the thing that defines you. Do you take the leap, or do you give into fears or obstacles?
Yeah.
What's your advice for somebody who has a dream of starting something entrepreneurial, whether it's a studio like yours or anything, but they just can't get over the hump?
I don't think a lot of people are meant to be entrepreneurs. Like, I really don't. And so my advice would be to honestly ask yourself why you want to open this place up. Because if it's for money, that's not gonna work. New businesses don't immediately make money, and you're way better off. You can find a company who's up and up, who's gonna offer you stock options, and you could become a millionaire within 5 years just through your stock options alone, working for someone else. And it'll give you that sense of security at the same time. It really depends what the hump is. If you have kids and your kids are the hump, then your significant other has to be okay with being the security. It really depends on why you want to start something of your own. And I could relate it the easiest to being a personal trainer. Like, just because you like working out does not mean you should be a personal trainer. It's the same thing with business. Just because you like drinking herbal tea does not mean you need a shop that sells herbal tea. So it's a really hard journey. And if you're mentally not okay with just sucking and failing for years, don't do it. Like, just erase it. Like, you don't have to go that way. It's not a status symbol to have your own business. Figure out your why and then pick whether like it's really the thing you want to do, or if it's something you just say you want to do because you think it gives you some kind of like social standing.
Yeah. So it's not really a matter of overcoming an obstacle or taking the leap or overcoming your fear necessarily. It's first about authentically looking into yourself and figuring out whether you're cut out for it, what your reasons are, making those kind of lists and really working through the self-awareness piece. I like that advice. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the specific things that you have found through your world travels and your experience that actually help people to be at their peak wellness position. And also, since your tagline is aging backwards, I definitely want to talk about anti-aging stuff as well. How did you decide? You know, I know you do the mild hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I've done and I love, and I'm going to buy another package because it's interesting because I was nervous about doing it because I've kind of health things and I was just a little bit nervous, but it's no big deal. And it's so cool to know that you're breathing pure oxygen and then letting that get into your body and feeling how you feel afterwards. And it may not be like, for someone like me, it wasn't like instant, but I just did the consistent, like once a week package for 5 weeks, I think. And I have seen an enormous improvement. And so I want to go ahead and get another package, but it's really an interesting therapy. And was that the first thing that you brought in?
I figured out what things were going to work together, because my list of therapies I wanted in this journal is like pages and pages.
Yeah.
And the hyperbaric, I wanted to bring things in that you don't have to physically do anything. That's one of the biggest, that's one of the biggest levers I found. If you as a client has to do a thing, the chances of you following through and doing that thing are so low because of how many other priorities you have in your life. So the hyperbaric chamber, the red light, the compression, you don't have to do a thing. And not only that, you can also do work while that thing is being done to you. So you get the benefits of the therapy, but you don't have to physically change anything about your lifestyle. And if your excuse is, oh, I work, I'm too busy, you could bring your work here with you.
So you took away the barriers.
I took away a lot of those barriers. And I realized that for people as well, like low energy was one of the biggest symptoms that everyone said, even when I was 20, when I was 25, when I was 30, oh, just wait till you're this, just wait till you're that, just wait till you're this. You just get so tired and you have so much less energy and you have all, there's no way that this is what happens to people as they age. That sounds like a symptom to me, not something that is ingrained into our genetics.
We don't have to accept.
You don't have to accept it. So in my brain, I was like, there has to be a way for me to figure out how to get the most out of your life as you're aging. Because if you think about it, initially you have all of, when you're going through your hormonal years, those spikes are driving you insane, like mentally and physically, and you're having growth spurts and you're all over the place. As you get into your late 20s, early 30s, late 40s, like those should theoretically be peak years of hormonal stability and wellness and being and some type of financial security, because you've gotten over the initial career, what do I do? So those should, in my brain, if I just follow the logic here, this is where I should be peaking, like the start of my peak should be like late 30s. How do I get there?
Yeah.
So the things I brought in with the red light and the compression, they're all things that help you flush the lymphatic system. They're all things that externally will bring in more energy. They will help you sleep better. The foundations are absolutely sleep, nutrition, hydration, and movement. I like sunlight. They've been around for thousands of years. They have never changed. We have genetically developed to need these things to function. Between the hyperbaric will help with the oxygen and the breathing and the sleep. The red light will help with the sunlight and the energy and the sleep. The compression will help with the movement piece of it. I do health optimization with people, which we looked into. The health optimization medicine, I got trained with the doctor who I'm connected with for hyperbaric therapy, but they also do home hope. And I did my own blood work with this doctor when I first found out about him, and the numbers were perfect. Like I can't get people who I've been working with to get to these numbers. So whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. And that gave me more reaffirmation that what I've been doing is clearly working, because even on the blood work level, it's showing, it's giving me that feedback that yes, it's working. Your cells are optimal. Your hormones are optimal. Your vitamins are optimal. I just recently found out, you're going to love this, Mitzi. There's a top 10 list of most polluted places in America and poor air quality. We live smack in the middle of 3 of them.
No way.
We are like, there's everything else is so spread out all over the US. And where we are, there's a little triangle and we are right in the middle. So there are so many environmental toxins where we live that contribute to health issues in people.
Yeah. That is crazy, because what I found out, and I am sure you deal with this all the time, is by the time people come into your studio, your place, they're at a tipping point where they've had an accumulation of enough toxins where it's made their bucket of what they can handle, their body can handle, overflow. And then you have to get into the business of trying to figure it out. And which is what happened with me. And so the things that you are working with, the oxygen therapy, the red light therapy, those are so simple and so baseline, like ways to help to begin to establish a regulation in your body that is dysregulated. But there's a lot more to it. So like
there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah. What kinds of things do you see from the people who come into you that are the biggest culprits that contribute to toxicity and a lack of wellness?
That's a really good question. So first off, the health optimization panel that I do with people, that goes into vitamin and nutrient deficiencies. It also goes into whether you have absorption issues. It'll go into environmental toxins, heavy metal toxicities, gut dysbiosis, and neurotransmitter health. And it'll go over all of your omega 3, 6, 9, saturated, unsaturated. It'll go into all of your amino acid profile. So it gives you an 18-page report. And you could also do on top of that allergy testing. What I found most is that people who think they have allergies, they actually have gut issues. And a lot of those gut issues are whether they're lacking in actually eating like a whole diet or things that their body needs. Some in the winter, I'm an intuitive eater. So I've gotten to a point where I don't eat because it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I eat because I'm hungry. I can eat an 18-ounce steak in one sitting and be happy with it. I don't do small meals all day long. I've tried all of it, and I figured out what my 80-20 is, and my body's just gotten to a point where it's so efficient, it tells me and I listen. But for a lot of people, they eat on the go. They're not even chewing their food. They're just swallowing it in the car. So their gut can't physically digest. They can't pull those nutrients out. In our area, there's a huge vitamin D deficiency issue. And without vitamin D, your hormones can't function. So it starts like this slow domino effect of every single block being knocked over.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do an experiment on everything I do. I experiment on myself first. And I wanted to see what my vitamin D levels would do in the summertime in Pennsylvania without supplementing. And I just got them tested. They're 26. 26 is extremely low. And this was summertime. This was a person, myself, who is consciously aware that we need sun to function. And I thought, well, if I spend time outside in a way of having a business and a normal schedule, like what would a normal person probably be like? And it was 26. Around 26, your bones can break. If you have a big enough fall, you can get a fracture in your bones, which is something that happened to me before I opened the center. I was training for a half marathon. And I ended up getting a stress fracture. And then I did all of the testing and they're like, yeah, your vitamin D levels are this low. And I had no idea. Even at 26, the doctor is not going to sit down with you and tell you what you need and how much of it you need. Like a healthy adult on a healthy level should be at about 50. On the doctor medical level, like there's a big difference between the healthcare system and the healthcare system.
Yes. The range that they say is okay to what is actually okay.
What is optimally okay?
Yeah.
Like on a regular scale, you're looking at everyone from 18 to 80. You're not looking at the prime ages. Like on the health scale that I compare results to, it's like 18 to 25. It is your prime, most healthiest. We are only looking at adults in this category. So for just between the vitamin D, the poor sleep, there's a lot of neurotransmitter issues because of the poor quality sleep. And whether that's having a TV in our bedroom, charging our phone in our bedroom, scrolling through social media, checking your phone for the time at night, all of these things that prevent good sleep. Like a lot of people in this country too, they have pets and they let the pets sleep in the bed with them. And you don't notice it, but unless, like I wear a Whoop because I love data, and I'm not going to tell you something unless I've actually tried it on myself and I have some knowledge to speak to it. Otherwise, I'll just listen and say, okay. But unless you're physically tracking, what is your sleep doing? What's affecting it? What are my habits? You don't have to do everything at once, but pick one thing and then do that thing until you're consistent at it, and then add another thing onto it. So that's the biggest thing is poor habits, like poor sleep habits, terribly poor sleep habits. That will just knock everything out. And for women, especially, not eating enough protein and having a habit of not actually sitting down to eat. Those are the three easiest habitary. Oh, that's a word now. Habitary
we'll
changes.
Keep it. I love it.
We'll keep it. It's pretty easy, but unless you see that physically on a piece of paper, you're not going to believe it. You'll just say, oh, no, I'm fine. Unless you're journaling or you're taking pictures or you're doing something to bring awareness to that thing, you may not even realize that you're doing it.
It's just a whole lifestyle. And this is what is the problem, because people are not willing to change their lifestyles. Many people are, and I do think many more people are waking up to this now. But I talk to people, I'll go someplace and bring my own food because I'm very particular right now about my food. And people they look at you as if you have an eating disorder. They think there's something wrong with you if you're not eating the handful of Cheetos they have out on the table.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I don't judge it, but it's very interesting.
But you're getting judged.
Like
you don't judge it, but you're the one who's getting judged. That
I'm the one
falling into this trap of eating all the processed food colored garbage.
Because it's usually not just one thing that is your problem. It's a whole bunch of different things. And it could be almost everything that you're doing if you're just living. And what happens is your body doesn't catch up to it necessarily right away. For some people it does. They might be younger and experience a chronic illness, but for most people, we get to live a certain amount of time, and we are playing a little Russian roulette with our lifestyle until it catches up to us.
Yep. So in my center, so the hyperbaric chambers are pretty good for brain health, especially the mild units I have. So I do get a significant amount of people with TBIs, concussions, and PTSD. And especially for a concussion and a TBI, it's so important for you to reduce carbohydrates out of your meals because fat is neuroprotective. Carbohydrates stimulate and exacerbate all of the symptoms that you naturally would get as part of a concussion or TBI. And I currently have a client that on my first day here, he's literally tried everything for years and nothing has worked. This is the last thing I found. This is the last thing I can try. Otherwise, I just have to be depressed for the rest of my life and live this horrible life. And I had a conversation with him. Hey, what do you eat for breakfast? He's like cereal and milk and blueberries. I go,
you can keep the blueberries.
He's like, why? What do you mean? That's what I've always eaten. Have none of your neuro doctors, like not a single person you've talked to has told you to stop eating sugar for breakfast?
No.
He's that's bad. Crazy. Are you kidding me? That's the first thing. And unfortunately, doctors are not trained in wellness or nutrition. Unless they're personally interested in it, there's very few doctors that will have that conversation with you. And I felt a little bad, but not because of my personality. Like, I'll just tell you how it is. Directly.
You're direct.
I'm super direct with people. I'm like, bud, go home and throw that crap out. He's like, well, what am I going to eat? I said, I don't know. Eggs, avocados. Yeah. Don't eat. Why don't you just skip breakfast? If like your habit is to eat cereal for breakfast, just skip it. He's like, whoa, I could do that? Yeah, you can skip breakfast. You don't have to eat because it's breakfast time. So over the course of him coming in here, he's been so much more cheery. And he's just gone from this kind of very just, it's another day to, oh, I get to do this weekend. And the sun's actually out. So they're minor changes that happen, but it's so easy when you know the right questions to ask. Yeah. And like you said, I do get a lot of people that come in here after have gone through either the medical system or they're at like their wit's end, or the thing they've been doing for years has finally caught up with them, but they don't realize that's the thing because they didn't see an immediate like, oh, I eat cereal, I feel really bad. There's no direct correlation to it. So we have to work backwards and tease it out and show them what the problem actually is. So then they could decide whether they want to make that change or not.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really great book called Grain Brain. I think it might be
I've heard of
called
that one.
Dr. Perlmutter, I think. And it's very connected. The gluten and grains are very connected to brain health. And
Yeah.
even Dr. Terry Waltz, who I've interviewed a couple of times about MS, that's one of the first things that people with multiple sclerosis should not be eating, gluten and grains, because and not eating them actually, like in my case, actually the way that I changed my diet, and for me, it's a little unique, but it actually stopped me from having neurological symptoms, which are brain spinal cord related symptoms.
Yeah.
Like I saw the direct correlation. Now, some people have symptoms, they don't correlate. So it makes sense, but it's so interesting. So now I know you're also really focused on the anti-aging piece. And I know that the red light therapy is very good for that. I have used it for that. I love doing the red light therapy myself. I have to get back in and do that. I'm going to buy my own unit for my new house.
I get no commission from it, but I recommend like everybody get a red light panel. I love it that much.
I'd love to be able to do it all the time. And so I know that is a big thing for you. Can you talk a little bit about the anti-aging piece of wellness?
It's anti-aging to me anyways is not necessarily like changing your physical age, but it's changing your energy levels and your biological age and your ability to process things. If you think of yourself when you were 20 and then you go all night drinking and you're ready to go the next day to work and you don't even realize it. And now you have a glass of wine at 40 and you're like, oh my God, what did I do this for? There's a lot that goes into the anti-aging piece. The hyperbaric chambers, one of the studies that they're working on is reversing your telomere length. So the little caps on the end of your DNA that unwind as you age that creates aging symptoms, you can actually tighten them back up by changing certain habits. Your sleep is the biggest lever. Like I can't emphasize enough how much of a lever sleep is for aging. And if you understand how epigenetics works, they're like light switches. Genetics are things that you're born with. Epigenetics are things that you could change over the course of your life. So everyone is born with let's say 1,000 switches, and different habits will turn on switches and turn off switches. Your night of binge drinking and poor sleep is going to turn on, and in studies, actually, there's a lot more than 1,000 switches, but in the studies, it will turn on 700 different epigenetic markers for inflammation, for chronic disease, for cancer, for lowered immunity, and it will turn off all of the switches that protects you against every single one of those things.
What is the thing that turns it on and off? The sleep?
The sleep, yeah. Okay. It's your body's ability to recover in that state.
Yeah.
Fasting. Same thing with fasting. The reason cancer cells grow so quickly is because they had to give up their ability to protect themselves in order to replicate. So there's always a give and take. If you want to kill off the cancer cells, then you need to stop giving them the resources they need to replicate, which is sugar. So if you go on without even knowing whether you have this, we all have it in some capacity. There's no way that living a whole full life, there's not going to be some kind of cellular damage and replication. Right. So by doing regular fasts, you can actually kill off those cells that could potentially turn cancerous without even realizing that you're doing it. Because every time your body goes into a fast, the protective shell of a healthy cell will kick on and turn into this little hard turtle shell. So it will function internally without needing external things. The cancer cell is opened and it's looking for resources to replicate. And if it doesn't find those resources, it dies. So there's so many little things like that helps with the anti-aging portion of it.
Biological age is on a lot of people's radar because there's that guy, Brian Johnson, who's out there, a billionaire spending millions of dollars a year trying to, and he has, have you seen pictures of him lately? He looks like he's 12 years old now.
Yes.
But I've also seen some other guys and gals that are also showing up with the markers of a low biological age. And the sleep is a big thing. The fasting is a big thing. And also the strength training, interestingly, is a big thing as well. Are there any other things that are contributors to lowering your biological age?
So those tests could actually be hacked. So don't believe everything. You can actually, within the span of 3 months, drop your age because you can do things to the test if you know what it's marking for and how to control all of the responses of your body to different things. But long term, it's not the thing you do, it is the thing you do consistently. That is the biggest, there's not a one size fits all. If you're like, methylene blue is something that's used in emergency rooms when you have like a drug overdose or anything that requires you to be really highly oxygenated. But it could also be used in times of illness. So if you have any kind of disease like COVID, for example, that lowers your body's oxygenation levels, your body needs oxygen as a nutrient. So you can actually get it through taking methylene blue. It's just these little things that you might not need all the time, but you consistently know to do it when the time is right. The biological age space, like alcohol, I choose your poison, right?
Yeah, I know.
Eating, and to me, life is about actually enjoying it. As you could tell by my bucket list, I went to Paris for almost 2 weeks and I drank wine at every meal and I ate a croissant for every breakfast. And I don't restrict myself in any way. My body just does not crave that all the time. And whenever my body craves it, I understand that it's an actual life fulfillment craving. It's not I'm stressed out and I'm stress eating craving. And even when you get to that point, like with the strength training you mentioned, you will become a much better user of energy when you strength train. So whatever calories you eat, your body is going to burn a lot more of them, even when you're just sitting down. There's someone who's my size next to me who doesn't work out, and me, I will burn more calories doing nothing than they are because my body is operating in a higher capacity. There's just pick a topic and we could talk about, there's so many, like ice bath. It's great if you want to develop brown fat. So people have brown fat and white fat. White fat's the bad stuff. Brown fat's the one that's going to burn the white fat for you. It's great for reducing inflammation and for creating brown fat, but it is not something you should do if you are already highly inflamed or if you are in a sympathetic state for most of the time. If you're like a highly stressed person, the ice bath is another stressor. So you're better off taking a warm bath than an ice bath. There's just, it's not a thing. And that's why people just researching things online. It's good that you're researching, but unless you're talking to someone who has spent their life like doing this and understanding and being able to just tease out what exactly is your lever by this kind of conversation, it's really hard for you to know if you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Nothing is an absolute. None of those things should just be taken willy-nilly, like as an absolute. And I learned that about supplements as well, but that's a really good point. It's got to be unique to you. And it takes a long time to figure this stuff out. And you have to do your own research and be your own health advocate. You must. It's so important. And that's why it's so wonderful that you have this great place that people can go to if they're in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's a wonderful place.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me just ask you my final questions for the Blessings podcast. What are your biggest lessons in life?
Oh man.
Or
just
one.
Say yes. Say yes more.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I love that.
That's an easy one for anyone. Yeah. Say yes more. It will take you on an adventure of a lifetime, and it just gets you comfortable being uncomfortable. And if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Like those two go together. So you don't have to say yes to everything, but the things that maybe your heart's, oh, this sounds fun, or you have a little bit of like passion towards it, just say yes to those things.
Okay. I love that. And what about your blessings? What's your biggest blessing in life?
My connections, like with my family and my sister's babies. They're my little besties. I have friends that I've known since moving to America, 20, 25, 30 years, my friendships, that being able to cultivate and nurture those relationships is definitely the biggest blessing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Yuliya, for having this amazing conversation with me. We could have talked
This
another
was so
3
fun.
hours.
I know. I know. You're so great at interviews and talking to you so easy. And even when you come in, we're always like,
I know. We're like, close the door. No one else can come in. We're talking.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank
All
you
right.
so-
Yeah. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch with Yuliya, you can find her on social media at Elixir Health and Wellness. And where else, Yuliya?
That's it's ELIXIR. Every social media is the same. Elixir
Okay.
Health and Wellness, and elixirlv.com is the website.
Nice. All right. Thank you.
Hey, everybody still listening. Will you go give a 5-star review to this podcast? Mitzi puts in so much effort and so much love into this. She's brilliant. She deserves it. So I am going to go right now. By the way, by the time you hear this and you go give your 5-star review, you should be able to go find my 5-star review of this podcast. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing.